We will now begin today's webinar. This webinar is being recorded so those not able to join us today can listen to this program at a time that is convenient for them. A link to the audio recording will be included in an email to all members, which will be sent out later this week. My name is Katie Ramos, and I'm the Program Associate for Goodwin House at Home. It is my pleasure to introduce your program moderator, Sue Dalton, Director of Sales at Goodwin House Incorporated.
Thanks, Katie, and thank you to all of you who are joining us today for this webinar. We're hoping that you're here to gain insights on how residents of the Goodwin House Life Plan communities have stayed safe and engaged during the coronavirus pandemic, and will continue to during the coming months. I am not only the Director of Sales at Goodwin House, I'm also the daughter of a Goodwin House Alexandria resident, pictured here with me. I have seen firsthand the enjoyment that residents are receiving from the outdoor concerts, the Tai Chi classes, the small gatherings with friends, and many other activities that take place regularly here. And everyone in my family has peace of mind, knowing that my mom has made a plan for her future that includes access to Goodwin House's high-quality healthcare should she need it. America is now, Katie, if you could just back up for one slide, please. America is now in month 9 of the pandemic. We are grateful for the continued progress that is being achieved to understand the virus and keep people safe. Progress continues to be made on vaccines. We saw something about that in the news yesterday and today. We know we will need to continue to follow safety guidelines and health recommendations for many months. Safety now and in the future has been the focus for the leadership team of Goodwin House. We are pleased to have them with us today as our featured speakers. Shortly, you'll hear from Rob Liebrick, President and Chief Executive Officer, Richard Carter, Chief Financial Officer, Linda Latiana, Chief Operating Officer, and Lindsay Hutter, Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer. All have been working tirelessly to keep residents safe and engaged. And a few housekeeping notes before we get started on the webinar. You will see the PowerPoint slides of our presentation and our featured experts on your computer screen. You may want to adjust the volume on your computer if you're having trouble hearing me or our speakers. We have allowed time for questions and answers following the presentation. Let me explain to you how you can pose questions using the chat function. Feel free to enter a question in your questions pane at any time during the webinar. This slide provides visual instructions on how to do that. I'll give you just a minute to review that. Okay, while we will be speaking of life plan communities today, it's important to note that Goodwin House also serves older adults who wish to age in place in their own homes through our Goodwin House at Home program. Some Goodwin House at Home members have made a seamless transition to a life plan community with the assistance of their Goodwin House at Home team. As a mission-driven organization, Goodwin House also manages the Lewinsville retirement residence for older adults requiring financial assistance. On our next slide, you'll see that no matter where you choose to live, Goodwin House provides healthcare services such as physical therapy through Goodwin House Home Health and compassionate care through Goodwin House Palliative Care and Hospice. Now, let's take a look at our agenda for the webinar today. Our first speaker is CEO Rob Liebrick, who will share how Goodwin House is fulfilling our mission and how he envisions the organization evolving over the years. Lindsay Hutter and Linda Latiana will review how we have supported Goodwin House residents, members, and our community throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Of course, none of our work would be possible without a strong financial foundation. CFO Richard Carter will share highlights of Goodwin House's financial strength. And finally, I will take a few minutes to discuss your plan for the future and how we can help. We will conclude with an opportunity for you to ask questions of our speakers. And so now it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Rob Liebrick, President and CEO of Goodwin House Incorporated. Rob?
Thanks, Sue. Great to be with you and all those that are with us in the internet world and this wonderful Zoom, presentation. I just wanted to start off actually by taking a moment of reflection, just a pause. I know there's a lot of people out there that have been challenged and suffering, have had losses, know people that have had losses. So I just wanted to take a moment to close our eyes together, send some extra love, kindness, and support to those who might need it during this time. Thanks for that. So my joy is to talk about the mission of Goodwin House and how we're going to be going forward. And as we'll see on the next slide, the mission of Goodwin House as an organization is to support, honor, and uplift the lives of older adults and those who care for them. And I've been in service to older adults since 2002. And certainly during my time, 18 years, I've never seen anything like what we're envisioning or what we're experiencing now. And it's never been more important to be a part of an organization that has a strong mission focus. And I'm so grateful. I started my role as president and CEO in July of 2019. And many residents have asked me and staff have asked me, geez, Rob, is this the right thing to do? Is this the right organization to be a part of during this time in this pandemic? And I've said consistently and felt in my heart, in my head, that there's no better organization to be a part of right now, because of what we believe in and how we live out our mission. As we'll see in the next depiction, just a couple of mission moments, and I like to start off with moments. Our focus right now has been around to continue to protect and engage our house, and our mission moments have allowed us to do that. So you'll see a couple, three here. One is acknowledgement from an association called Leading Age Virginia that provided an award to our Silver Panthers for advocacy work that they've been doing. Silver Panthers are represented by over 100 residents at Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads who've continued their work to fight for what they believe. And that's exactly what we're about as an organization. We want to uplift our residents, and that's a fantastic example and acknowledged on a statewide level the great work that our Panthers have done. Another wonderful example of our mission is not only around supporting our residents, but also supporting the staff that are so dedicated to each and every one of our members and to our residents. And recently, a few years ago, actually, a resident came to us and said, I'm noticing that some of our staff are having challenges getting through the process of becoming a citizen in the United States. And one of the barriers is that they're not able to pay for the test. At the time was $725. It was a barrier. And now that test is actually over $1,000 in this country, just recently changed. And so for people that want to become citizens and have a chance to vote and really engage in this country, it's becoming harder and harder for them to do that. Is there something that we as Goodwin House can do to make that different? And so with that resident's suggestion, a new focus was born, and we started to support U.S. citizenship efforts for any employee who wanted to become a U.S. citizen. And we've had so many now. I think we're heading into the 60 individuals who've been able to achieve that status or on the path of achieving that status. And recently, the Washington Post highlighted one who just was so excited, Saba, who I just saw yesterday. She is a fantastic individual, our dietitian at Goodwin House Alexandria, and had a chance to vote for the very first time as an American citizen, supported in large part because of the resources that were provided for her to get through that citizenship process. And that third mention of a mission moment is recognizing that today, especially today, that we're all in this together, that we absolutely impact each other as it relates to this pandemic. And when we're thinking about each other, how can each of us do something for someone else? And so we, over the last 9 months, as Sue talked about, we've been developing and learning some hard-fought lessons in regards to the pandemic. And as an organization, we felt that we were going to be better off by sharing those lessons learned, not just with other senior living providers, but also with the general public. And so you'll find on our website that we have a whole playbook that will be discussed later today. And that playbook has allowed thousands and thousands of other people around the country and really now around the world to see some of the lessons that we've taken from the pandemic and apply them for themselves to help them get through this time. So as a faith-based organization with a strong mission, this idea of sharing what we've learned is something that is core to our beliefs and our values. So great mission moments to start with. So it's no surprise. This is a quote from Marcus and Millichap. It's a special report they did on senior housing, but I think it encapsulates the challenges that we're experiencing as a field. And again, it's no surprise that our focus is on the well-being of our residents and our members and our frontline staff and our staff overall. Those are critical pathways for us. In fact, when the pandemic started, our board chair, Mary Hicks, she and I had a discussion, and she said, we are a strong organization. We have a strong mission. We're strong financially. We have strong leadership. What I want you to make sure of, Rob, is that you do whatever you can to save lives. Do whatever you can to save lives. And that's exactly what we've been doing, focusing our resources to save lives, but also engage lives. And that's critical to the work that we're doing now. What's impacting us as an individual organization is certainly impacting the entire field of senior living, which you'll see recognized in our next slide. There's a discussion around the occupancy within our field. It is slipping quick in many respects. Skilled nursing environment is really challenged today. For-profit and even not-for-profit assisted living, standalone assisted living communities are struggling, and folks are thinking about independent living. Is this going to be an organization that has the resources to be around through the pandemic? And so people sometimes are pausing and thinking longer about making that transition. I was just talking to a new resident who moved in July, and she said, this has been fantastic for me. And I didn't want to just stay in my home. I knew I was going to be just as safe or even safer within Goodwin House with all the protocols that they put in place. But that nationally, this is the discussion that's taking place. And one of the key determinants is if you were a strong operator before with high occupancy, you're likely to get through these times, between now when the vaccine comes out and when we're able to more freely get out and about without so much of the fear and anxiety that so many of us have, so many of the older adults, but all of us have that are in service to older adults as well. So choosing a strong organization today, one that has strong financials, one that really lives in a strong mission-oriented focus that will come around both its residents and its members and its staff without regard on the financial side initially. That's an important discussion. And I think it begs the question for everyone out there, for you, for your friends, to choose wisely where you're going to put your faith as it relates to your next decision about lifestyle. So one of the greatest joys I've had is over the last year plus is really to understand the strengths of Goodwin House. And we just recently shared this slide with our staff, the top 10 things that I looked at as Goodwin House strengths. And we used the top 10, a specific reason. There's a little icon down there. For the second year in a row, we were acknowledged as a top 10 workplace by the Washington Post, not within the senior living space, but throughout the entire continuum of organizations, whether you were a bank or an insurance provider. We were just a part of the mix, and we were considered one of the top 10 places to work, now second year in a row. We're really proud of that, and I think it speaks to one of the most important things we have as a strength, which is our people and our focus on our people. That focus on people is allowing us to make sure we're making conscious decisions to support our staff, which we started to do at the start of the pandemic. I've been talking with a number of them personally, just one-on-one, And they keep on articulating that the early decisions for our organization to start testing on a regular basis has given not only them confidence, but their families confidence to come back again and again to the community, to serve residents, to serve members. So that focus early on, that commitment of financial resources early on for our people has been tremendous. And I think that's fantastic. The other strength that I would highlight here is innovation. We are recognizing that we don't want to just stand still. We want to get better. We want to continually improve. And so you'll see a recent quote just in the Washington Post over the weekend of another article that highlighted our small house model in the Goodwin House Alexandria community, which is a neighborhood focus on a skilled nursing environment. And it's very different. It's non-traditional, but it's allowed us to have no cases of COVID within our skilled environment at Goodwin House Alexandria. So taking that sense of innovation and continuing to pull that thread all the way through, I think is critically important. And as I've already referenced before, just really focusing on that mission to support, honor, and uplift both our residents, our members, older adults all together within the area, and the staff. That mission, living that mission each and every day is critical. And we do that through the following lens, which we'll look at on the next slide. This is the thought that really resonates with me and with the team. And you heard Sue talk about, really truly her mom being in the community. Our first thought every morning is, how do we see each person as our favorite family member, and then act accordingly. Certainly the first hierarchy you need is to keep people safe, and we recognize that. But right after that, and extremely important, is to make sure that people have opportunities for engagement, and that's critical too. And then we want to couple that with a delivery of a sense of hope, love, and understanding, which we think are really important parts of the aging process. I could have added, or probably should have added, the word fun, because that's really also at the core of what we've been doing for a number of years, and continuing to find ways to have fun during a time of pandemic, which may sound counterintuitive, but is extremely important as an organization. Sue, I think with that, I'll turn it back to you for Linda and Lindsay to talk more about our pandemic activity.
Great, thank you, Rob. Thanks for that handoff. And I know that I speak for many family members and employees when I say how appreciative we are of the hard work that goes into leading this organization and protecting and engaging this house. So thank you. Next, Linda Latiana, Chief Operating Officer, and Lindsay Hutter, Chief Strategy and Marketing Officer, will share the specifics of our approach to tackling the virus while also ensuring that residents enjoy an active lifestyle. Linda and Lindsay?
Thank you so much, Sue. And for everyone's knowledge, like Sue, I have a mother who's a resident. She lives at Goodwin House Alexandria, and she's been there since last December. So the photo that you see of me is my mother and my brother and I on December 20th, 2019. And that was the day my mother, who lived her entire life in the state of Illinois, flew to Virginia at the age of 94 to move into residential living in Goodwin House Alexandria. So like Sue, every day I wake up literally thinking about my favorite family member who's served by the Goodwin House mission. As we step into the next slide, what Linda and I would like to do over the next several slides is actually invite you to come inside and experience the ways in which we make decisions to support, honor, and uplift our residents, our Goodwin House at Home members, and our staff members. And on this next slide, I specifically want to focus on what are the three guiding principles. If you'll go back just one, Katie, what are the three guiding principles for our response to COVID? The first one you see on the far left is leadership focus. Let me tell you about that. In February, we formed the Infection, Precaution, and Planning Team. We call it the IPP team for short. It consists of our senior management, our healthcare and nursing leaders, our executive directors, and our medical directors. And the IPP team meets regularly. In fact, we just met this morning. We talked about the Pfizer vaccine and the progress with it. We talked about antibody tests that Eli Lilly is putting forward. We also talked about the coming Thanksgiving holiday and how we will make sure that our residents and our staff have a fulfilling holiday, but safely. So this team is regularly engaged around safety and engagement. Second guiding principle, proactive approach. As Rob mentioned, our organization made a decision in April to be able to obtain tests on our own so we could determine when we would test our residents and our staff. And we started that testing in May. And we do it regularly, so we have a baseline to understand where all our residents and our staff are. But we also test sporadically. That helps us catch any of those asymptomatic cases that are out there and catch them early. And we continue to test. In fact, today, we're doing testing at Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads as part of that proactive regular testing. And then finally, in the right-hand column, you see the words mission mindset. I think from Rob's remarks, you now understand how focused we are on our mission. Rob mentioned that we developed a playbook in August when we took all of our protocols, over 200 infection precaution protocols, and we put them into a playbook that schools and churches, small businesses, and others could use and adapt so they could continue their operations and safely. Back in April, we were struggling to find PPE. The global markets were just grabbing for PPE. National governments were taking the inventory that existed for their allocation. And organizations like ours, and even though we're somewhat of a regional organization, we weren't large enough to get PPE. So our director of supply chain said, wait a minute, what if we put together a group buy and we invite hospitals and we invite other senior living organizations and we invite medical practices to join us? We can then go on the global market and we'll have a large enough purchase that we can get the PPE. And that's exactly what Goodwin House did. And over 60 organizations have benefited from our group buys to date. And finally, we've also opened up testing access through the relationships that we've developed to help other organizations obtain testing. So as we slip to the next slide, we're going to see how all of that leadership focus, proactive approach, and mission mindset translates into some numbers. So let's look at the first set of numbers, and that's our testing. We've conducted over 10,000 tests to date of our residents, our staff, and our hospice patients. We've conducted another 300 tests for other organizations that said, we want to try to reopen our business. Can you help us? If you move to the middle column, you see that we're referencing that PPE. And we've actually now to date enabled over 65 organizations, more than from that original first group buy in April, to obtain PPE and at significant discounts because we're going in and buying it together. To date, upwards of 1 million pieces of PPE have been successfully ordered and delivered by Goodwin House. And then in the far right column, when all of this began back in March, we actually transitioned all of our programming to go virtual. That was for the safety of our residents and our staff. To date, we've conducted over 1,200 virtual events for our residents and over 30 weekly events for our Goodwin House at Home members. And in just a minute, Linda's going to tell you more about how we have blended the virtual and the online. But I do want to share with you a few numbers because you probably are thinking, gosh, how many of your residents, how many of your staff members have been tested positive for the coronavirus? Quickly, at Goodwin House Alexandria, we have had 5 residents test positive, no one in our nursing center. And unfortunately, we lost 1 resident earlier this year with COVID complications. At Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads, a total of 11 residents have tested positive, and we lost 4 residents that passed away to coronavirus. We've had 37 staff members test positive and recover at Goodwin House Alexandria, and we've had 33 staff members test positive and recover at Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads. One last statistic, our Goodwin House Hospice program has served 40 patients that were COVID positive that either were living in their homes receiving care or in other senior living communities. So with that, I'm going to transition to Linda.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Hello, everyone. The opening photos probably showed you what life was like at Goodwin House, even during a pandemic. We have an active lifestyle going on at both campuses. As Lindsay said, we went virtual in the spring, but robust programming started in the summer. A lot of group programming moved outdoors with weekly concerts held in the courtyards and pop-up programs and games and exercise classes, weather permitting. We even had a drive-in movie at one of the parking lots. Last year, our group had a walk for Alzheimer's on the Washington Mall. This year, we had an Alzheimer's walk on campus. Outdoor dining is offered on both campuses. And in addition to the outdoor programming, our pools are open for lap swims. The fitness centers are available for individual workouts and personal training. And as you can see by the photos, we have wonderful art classes, and both communities have art galleries, and we've had exhibits by residents and also local artists. And I also have to mention that there are happy hours going on as well. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about the community outreach that our residents are so famous for. The clothing drives continue. Make a Difference Day, which is an annual collection for the local shelter, is going on right now. There's a group called Knit for Kids that has knitted over 3,000 sweaters that go to children all over the world. And during the pandemic, they knit 320 sweaters since March. So life goes on at both Goodwin House communities. And as we go to the next slide, I'll talk a little about technology. Lindsay mentioned that we've gone virtual. Well, we've had to keep our residents, staff, and visitors safe. We had screening tables at both communities in the lobbies. We've now moved on to an automated screening practice because we know that the screening kiosks will be important for our staff and our visitors in the future. The early pandemic programming was all virtual, but now we're moving into streaming programs. So we have an option of watching programs on the in-house channels and also seeing programs live throughout our communities. We're also doing Zoom programming for town halls and meetings, and that's a combination of small groups live at the events and other residents that participate over Zoom. And of course, our innovations chef is now introducing interactive Zoom wine tastings. And over to you, Lindsay, for the next slide.
Thank you, Linda. So Linda highlighted some of the ways in which technology has benefited our residents and our staff during the pandemic. We wanted to give you a little bit of a window, a peek into some of the other technologies that we're exploring right now. And the first is, and you'll see this on the list of bullets on the left, a Goodwin House Netflix. We have so much incredible programming, and often it may be live streamed and recorded and played back, but usually that's at a set time. So we said, wait a minute, the technology exists. Why don't we just have our own Netflix? So residents can go online, they can look at whatever program they want, and then they can download it, whether to their laptop or their smart TV, and they can play it. Just push the button, boom, and play. In addition, we are now taking the steps towards enhanced streaming options for all of the Goodwin House family members. And when we say Goodwin House family, we mean everyone that's part of Goodwin House, our residents, their families, our staff members, their families, our Goodwin House at Home members, and those persons that we serve through our home health and our hospice program across the community. And so we want to make it possible for any of the events that are taking place, whether it's a speaker with a foreign service officer or a fun aerobics or fitness class, that from the comforts of their home, they can live stream that and join along with the others that may be on our campuses. We're also looking at some robotics in a couple of ways. Robotics that can help us with infection precaution and cleaning. Robotics that help us deliver more services efficiently and safely. And finally, we're looking at some online billing to continue to be, if you will, very technologically innovative. Rob mentioned, as an organization, we have a mission to be innovative. And so these are examples of the ways that we're taking steps to be more innovative. Now, the big one, wellness. That's over to you, Linda.
Thank you, Lindsay. Well, I'm excited about our latest initiative. Using the model that we developed for the strategic plan, we've established an advanced team on wellness to further integrate and elevate wellness into everything we do for residents, members, and staff. We'll be using the International Council on Active Aging model, which embraces a purpose-filled and engaged life through the 7 dimensions of wellness. And you can see 4 on the slide here. Soon, we'll be conducting an audit of our current programs as we refine our culture of positive aging. So stay tuned, more to come. Back to you, Sue.
So I've got 2 more quick slides that I'm going to walk through, and then we'll hand it back to Sue. What you see in front of you right now is the COVID landing page on the Goodwin House website. And if you go to goodwinhouse.org and you get to the very top of the screen, there's a yellow bar at the very top, and it says COVID pages, read here. And if you go to the landing page, you will then have access to all of the updates that we share with our residents, with our staff, and with the family and friends of our residents. So first off, every day we publish our COVID case situation. We're incredibly transparent as an organization. Every day our residents can know, are there any new positive cases, a staff case or a resident case? What's the situation? On a weekly basis, we provide a summary of our COVID situation, our progress, our advance, our new protocols, whatever steps we're taking to keep our residents and our members safe and engaged. We also publish a weekly staff update, updating staff. And then every Friday, we send out an update to the family and friends of our residents that want to receive that information. So as much as Goodwin House is mission-minded, we're very, very transparent. And as we flip to the next slide, we're going to go a little bit deeper into our COVID pages on our website. And what you'll see is that we've published our special guides, our resources, our activities programs. So anyone across the country or even the world who says, I'm an older adult, or I have a loved one who's an older adult at home, what are ways that they can keep informed about how to keep safe? What are some activities that they can undertake in their home to stay engaged and thriving and vibrant? All of that's on our website. Mission-minded, transparent, absolutely focused on keeping everyone in the Goodwin House family safe and engaged. Back to you, Sue.
Thank you, Linda and Lindsay. I think your message was truly evident recently when a resident started her day by receiving her COVID test from a nurse who came to her apartment, followed by a delicious breakfast delivered by a friendly staff member, then a small socially distanced Tai Chi class. In the mid-afternoon, she enjoyed a glass of wine on the rooftop of Goodwin House Alexandria. So you and your staff have proven that we can be safe and still have fun, as Rob mentioned. When people like those of you listening today inquire about Goodwin House, they often ask about the financial strength of the organization, and rightly so. Moving to a life plan community is a commitment. And as Rob stated earlier, COVID's impact on the financial health of some senior living communities has been significant. CFO Richard Carter will now share some details on Goodwin House's financial health. Richard?
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Richard Carter, and I'm very happy that Sue asked me to be with you here today. I'm the Chief Financial Officer of Goodwin House, and I'm in my 11th year of service to our residents and members. Today, I want to briefly give you an idea of the financial soundness of our organization. In the next slide, let's talk briefly about our agreement with our residents. Our residents and members make a substantial financial and personal commitment to Goodwin House in exchange for, first, a continuum of care that provides residents residential living and, when necessary, assisted living, memory care, and health care for our residents. We promise to provide these services to you for your lifetime. Our overriding goal here, and mine especially, is our top priority is our financial strength. The key here is that we plan to be here for the long term, and we plan our resources to be financially strong on an ongoing basis. In the next slide, let's talk briefly about the key financial factors that people look at when they're evaluating the financial strength of an organization. I'm sure many of you have researched these. Let's just talk about ours for a second. We are a not-for-profit organization, so most of our capital resources come from public and bank debt. Our ability to service that debt is measured by a ratio called the debt service coverage ratio, which compares our cash flow to our debt service requirements. Our ratio is 2.19 times, meaning that we have over twice as much cash flow as necessary to service our debt. This is a very healthy ratio by industry standards. Our liquidity or cash reserves is also very high by industry standards. This attribute is measured by a metric called days cash on hand, which means the number of days that we could continue in business if our revenues were to go to zero, which is not going to happen, but it's the measure that our industry uses. Our days cash on hand is 692 days, meaning we could conceivably exist for almost 2 years with no revenues. And this, of course, is an extreme scenario, but that's how we measure ourselves in relation to our peers. We also we measure our resident-related operating margin by a measure called the net operating margin, which is the difference between our resident revenues and our resident expenses. Our ratio has historically been in the 3% to 5% range, which is normal for our industry. We may dip a bit this year because of COVID pressures and the money that we are expending to make sure that everybody stays safe, but our core ability to return to a normal margin exists. The most important metric is occupancy. Staying full is a measure of our resident satisfaction and our ability to produce adequate cash flows. Our residential living occupancy rate of over 95% are very strong by industry standards. Generally, if occupancy is strong, all the other financial and satisfaction measures will follow. Our net assets or net worth is $47.5 million, indicating financial reserves that will enable us to weather almost any storm, including the current COVID crisis, as Rob said. In the next slide, let's talk about our future financial strength. Our historical financial strength is only part of the story of our ability to serve you into the future. Our ability to serve our residents in the future is at least as important as our projection of our future ability to remain strong as measured by our actuaries. We use a firm called A.V. Powell, which is an industry leader in providing actuarial services. A.V. Powell, in their annual evaluations of our financial prospects, consistently gives us their equivalent of a good housekeeping seal of approval, meaning that our future prospects are among the best in their client base. In the next slide, let's talk about our public debt and how others view us. With our reliance on public debt as our main capital source, a significant indicator of our financial health is our credit rating. We are rated BBB+ by Fitch, which is the primary credit rating agency covering our industry. That BBB+ rating is an investment grade rating for those of you who want to invest in our bonds. And also, out of approximately 2,000 life plan communities, there are only 59 rated at BBB+, our rating, or better. And this rating is due to our history of financial strength. So just to summarize, the financial condition of Goodwin House is sound. We are well positioned to serve our current and future residents, and we have the liquidity and capital resources that allow us to maintain our facility in a first-class condition. Thank you very much for being with us today, and as Sue said, we'll be available for questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. You have provided some great information for those in our webinar audience who are currently doing their research on life plan communities. A reminder to all of you who registered for this webinar that we will be sending out a recording of the webinar, and you might want to consider using Richard's section that he just presented to you as a guide to questions that you should ask during your research. So you've heard from our leadership team about the strength of our mission, our efforts to keep residents safe and engaged, and the strong financial position we enjoy. Perhaps you're wondering what steps to take so that you can make Goodwin House part of your plan for a healthy and active future. On the next slide, you'll see that joining the Goodwin House Priority Club is the first step to take toward that lifestyle. Katie, the next slide, please. As a Priority Club member, you have an opportunity to participate in the many life-enriching activities that take place in the communities. Additionally, members enjoy complimentary meals in our dining venues, which gives them a really nice opportunity to meet residents, learn what life is really like in the communities, and decide whether or not it's the place for them. But many would say that the primary benefit, which is on our next slide, is priority access to the beautiful apartments at Goodwin House Alexandria and Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads. What you see on this slide is a very small sample of some of the floor plans that we offer at both communities, with well over 25 different floor plans available, ranging from cozy studios to large 3-bedroom apartments. There is a lot to choose from. On these next slides, we've included just a few photos of resident homes to show you that, for example, in this photo, dens are sometimes used as offices, kitchens contains the latest in finishes and appliances, and open floor plans provide bright and airy spaces. Many other beautiful photos and videos of our residents are available to you. So we urge you to make your plan if you haven't already. Letting each day go by without a plan for your future only increases the likelihood that important decisions will be made for you, not by you. So Katie, why don't we go into our question and answer period at this time? This is just a reminder on this slide is how you enter your questions using the question pane in your GoToWebinar control panel. And so as those questions start to come in, we've got our experts back on the screen to help us answer those questions. And I do have one, and I think that this is probably best for Linda's response, but I encourage you all to chime in if you'd like. And the question is this: Goodwin House is a faith-based organization. What exactly does that mean?
Goodwin House had its origins with the Episcopal Church, and we are still affiliated with the Episcopal Church, but we're open to all denominations. Faith-based means you see it in our mission, you see it in our staff, and you see it in our residents. We also, this has given me an opportunity to talk about one of our programs that is very unique to Goodwin House, and that's clinical pastoral education. We've had that program since 1998, and we have one of 7 CPE programs in a life plan community in the country. And in that program, we train seminarians, we train chaplains, we train a lot of different folks to learn to minister to elders. And our residents teach them, they participate in the program, and they learn from each other. It's a program of mutuality. So that's my answer, and I will turn this over to my colleagues for additional responses.
Okay, I think we covered that one. So let's move to another one, which also might be for you, Linda. And this is GHA, which is Goodwin House Alexandria, still CARF rated?
What was the question? Is it still CARF rated?
Yes, CARF accredited.
Both Goodwin House Alexandria and Goodwin House Bailey's Crossroads have been CARF accredited since we were able to do that. So in the early 90s, and yes, we have a 5-year accreditation. We're in year 2 of our latest 5-year CARF accreditation.
Okay.
Sue,
Go ahead.
Sue, I might just add, I know a couple of things have been put out there, PPE, personal protective equipment. That would be something to make sure everyone knows what PPE was earlier. And is an organization that assesses the financial soundness and the operational soundness of organizations like ours. And it's a self-selected process. So if you select to be a part of that audit, which is very unique, that gives you a sense, or gives the prospects a sense of stability, and gives the current residents and members a sense of stability as well. So it's quite unique. It puts us in that category or stratosphere that Richard talked about, of being sort of 59 out of 2,000 organizations throughout the country.
There are only about 320 CARF accredited life plan communities in the country, and that's the Commission on Accreditation for Rehab Facilities.
Great, thank you. And so this one is for me. So here's the question. If I was accepted to the Priority Club, does that mean that my finances are acceptable? So that's a great question. And during the process of joining the Priority Club, that is one of the steps. We do ask you to fill out a financial application, which is confidentially reviewed. And it's that financial application that allows us to determine which of those many floor plans might be best for you. And so another question is, Richard, this looks like this is for you. Is the operating margin of 3 to 5% after debt service? If not, what is the percentage after debt service?
It's not after debt service. It's the net operating margin is calculated based on resident revenues and resident expenses. It's not after debt service. I don't know what that number would be, but it would be lower clearly. But what's not included in the NOM, which covers debt service, is are the entrance fees that we collect from our residents. So that more than covers that. So there are two separate calculations, but we have adequate cash flow to cover both of those.
Okay, great, thank you. Here's a COVID question in relation to residents and testing. How available are COVID tests to residents on a request basis? Linda, that might be yours.
I'd be happy to take that. We test regular residents in all levels of living on a regular basis, more so in healthcare areas and in residential living. Testing has been available to residents on request when they request it, but we do regularly test all residents.
And Sue, if I could just add a context to overall COVID and testing for our organization. You know, when you look at the 10,500 tests that we've operated with since we started doing our testing, we are experiencing a less than 1% positivity rate when you put all that into context. Now, people living around the area, Alexandria, Fairfax, those areas are operating with around 4 or 5% positivity rate in total. So we're really proud of the work that we've been doing to be below that threshold of positivity rates. But we also know that any positivity rate is a challenge. So we're working hard to weed those out.
Great. Thank you, Rob. I've been asked to remind all of the webinar attendees who may be using the function on your control panel for hand raising. If you would please, instead of doing that, if you would please enter your questions in the question pane, then we will be sure to get them and do our best to answer all of the questions. This one is for me, and it is, what is the average waiting time to get an apartment to sign up for the Priority Club? And that is an it depends answer. So because we have so many different floor plans and a number of people who are currently Priority Club members, and then you combine with that, we never really know when apartments are going to become available. It can be as short as a few months to perhaps more than 2 years, depending upon the style of the apartment that you're interested in. The best way to learn more about that is to speak to one of the sales counselors who can give you all the information that you need about joining the Priority Club, about the various floor plans, and about how the process works. And the very last slide that we'll present to you contains phone numbers, and email addresses that would be helpful if you'd like to do that. So I'm looking for some other questions. Bear with me here. Well, this one might be fairly complex, but Richard, perhaps you can summarize. This person is just wondering how and where are resources invested by Goodwin House?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
How and when are resources invested by Goodwin House?
Goodwin House has a very active investment program. We've got a board subcommittee that's dedicated to managing our investment portfolio, and we make use of an outside manager to make recommendations to us about our portfolio. I'll say about that, we've got probably $160 million invested for the long term, and it's invested. I think long term is a key statement there. It's invested with a very long horizon in a well-balanced portfolio of equities and bonds and even a small amount of private equities. So that's a continuous process that's performed up to the very top levels of the organization.
So I'm going to jump onto that, if I may, and use the word investment with a slight twist and comment on the fact that Goodwin House also invests in our existing campuses. We invested in developing the new small healthcare center that Rob referenced on our Goodwin House Alexandria campus. We opened that in June of 2017. That was an innovative, bold move to try something different. And it's one of a handful of nursing homes in the country that has not had a positive resident COVID case. So that's a use of investment dollars back into the organization to keep our communities strong, innovative, and relevant for future residents.
Good point. Thank you, Lindsay. We have another question here, and this is about residents who live in the life plan communities who may not be comfortable with technology. And certainly there are a group of residents who are not comfortable with technology. And so the question is, as the winter months come upon us, how do we plan to keep those residents engaged if they're not able or interested in participating in a Zoom or streaming session?
Okay, I'll jump in on that. We have a lot of things going on in that area. Both communities have resident groups, resident volunteers that help other residents with their technology devices. So people are really getting up to speed. But for some that aren't comfortable or are getting tired of in-house programming, we have a lot of partnerships with schools, with CPE students. They're getting phone calls, they're getting no emails, they're getting phone calls. We have a lot of programs now starting up again. As I said, we have small group programs throughout both communities. It's not just online anymore. Even town halls and resident committee meetings are being held with small groups, so they can opt into those programs as well. We also are getting ready to hire a resident technology specialist that will help residents with not only with their devices, but train them to use computers and phones and move them into the century. So we have a lot of energy put into those topics.
And Linda, I would just add, I think one of the special programs you referenced was with schools, with St. Stephen's, St. Agnes School. We have such a great program, about 25 of their students connected with our residents, 25 residents within Goodwin House family. And they're making calls on a very regular basis. So we're having that intergenerational experience. It's not all using iPhones, but it's just a telephone sometimes. And that's keeping people tethered in a really unique way. We're really excited about those type of intergenerational programs as well.
Great. Okay, thank you. And here's another question. This is probably for Rob, Linda, or Lindsay, or maybe all three of you. What will be different, do you project, What will be different about senior living in the future due to the pandemic?
Rob, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, do we have another 3 or 4 hours for that, Sue?
Yeah, go ahead. 3 or 4 hours. Yep. I'm sure everybody on the webinar will hang on.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think the big things that I'm looking at are, there are going to be a number of providers that will not make it through over the next year. They just won't financially be strong enough. They'll have too much costs associated with the expenses of protecting people, the PPE that we talked about. So recognizing that there's going to be less choices for older adults is important. And so folks making sure that they choose a good organization to be with will be critical. I think the other thing that we're going to see is a challenge with staffing and being able to be a place where people want to come to work. I referenced earlier the fact that we, for the last 2 years, have been identified as a top workplace holistically, not just within senior living, by Washington Post. And that's critical for us to attract folks and have people want to come to work every day, especially during a pandemic. And so as an organization, we've also committed to making sure that our staff have living wages or competitive wages. No one will be paid less than $18 an hour come 2023. And we're on the path to that today. And we're dedicated to making sure that our staff are kept whole. We know that if they're kept whole, they'll create a great experience and a great environment for our residents and our members. So I think those are the two things that we're going to see play out, which is fewer providers, but also a real challenge for folks to find staff. And so I know a lot of times people think, well, I'll just stay where I'm at. I'll just find care when I need it. I think that's going to be a real challenge for folks if they're not tethered to either a Goodwin House at Home program or a community that has those resources and does the work, the heavy, hard work of finding the right staff. I think those are going to be challenges.
So when we talk about making your plan, that's really an important thing for people to keep in mind about what the future holds in terms of staffing in healthcare.
Absolutely.
Some comment there?
Sue, I would add 2 things to Rob's comments. And the first is that we are going to be safer organizations, those of us that have invested in strong infection precaution practices at a resident, a staff level, those of us, as Goodwin House have, that has invested in new ventilation systems, new ultraviolet cleaning machines. Linda showed you the photograph of the new biometric screening. We're not going to take that system and put it away when vaccines are widespread. We're going to keep that, which means that as any one of us as a staff member may be coming into the community and we have an almost imperceptible to us temperature, but it could mean that we're infectious with a cold or a virus, that's going to be caught. So I think we're going to have safer communities on the other side of this. We already do. And in addition, we're going to have much more in the way of programming. You heard us talk about the fact that we now can do in-person and virtual. We're going to be doing more and more live streaming beyond our campuses into the entire Goodwin House family across the region. So there will be even more safety reasons and even more engagement reasons to want to choose an organization like Goodwin House for your next season and where you want to live a safe and fulfilled life.
That's great. Great, thank you. So we are at 11:59. So it is time to conclude our webinar. We want to thank all of you who've attended and thank you especially for those very thought-provoking questions. A reminder that we will be sending out a follow-up email which will contain a link to the recording of today's webinar. So, and please feel free to share that information with your friends and family. We invite you to join our upcoming webinars on November 12th and December 8th, where you can learn more about Goodwin House at Home that was mentioned earlier during this webinar. You can always go to the events section of our website for information on upcoming events. If you would like more information about Goodwin House, we encourage you to call or email us. We will leave our contact information on the screen for a few more minutes so that you can have an opportunity to jot it down if you'd like. Again, thank you very much for joining us. Please stay safe and engaged. This concludes today's webinar.